Here to take a broader look at the significance of the legislative session, its big narratives and implications for sessions and elections to come. From Capitol Report, New Mexico, our good friend Rob Nicoleski. Political reporter for the Santa Fe New Mexican, Steve Terrell's here, as is tradition. One of the Albuquerque Journal's crew at the Roundhouse was James Monteleone. He's here with us again. And for the New Mexico Telegram, our good friend Matthew Reichbach. Let's think back to the first weeks of January, fellas, when so much of the talk was about who would win the Senate President Pro Tem seat. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Seems like a million years ago. Rob Nicoleski, let me read you something you tapped out on your typewriter.
Okay.
Says like this: Sanchez might as well wear Superman's cape in the Capitol. Consider that Democrats in the Senate have debated for weeks about which of them should become President Pro Tem of the chamber, but not a one suggested that anybody except Sanchez should be majority leader. And so, let me ask you this: when Mary Kay Papen, in fact, forced the hand of the caucus, what happened to Michael Sanchez after that? Was there some loss there in any appreciable form?
I'm not sure, because the Senate kind of works behind this cloak where you're sort of reading the tea leaves all the time. I will say, though, that that Michael Sanchez still wields so much power, but it's not, you know, a vast power, because just the fact that Mary Kay Papen was named Senate Pro Tem over the choice of Pete Campos, I think, speaks volumes. And also, Michael Sanchez voted against the last-minute tax deal, and yet still got through other Democratic leadership. So I think things are a little bit more dispersed than we might think.
Right, interesting. James Monteleone, good to see you back again. Let's talk about leadership again, staying with the Senate Pro Tem. Coming out of this, certainly no one would ever argue that the man is, you know, weakened. That's just not a word that's going to work out. But he is fighting some health issues and some other things. Was there some appreciable bounce, as you witnessed from this session, about that?
Well, certainly, I think that in many ways, Senate Majority Leader Michael Sanchez, in some ways almost I would describe as flexed his muscle. You know, he came back after, you know, a tight race for re-election in November, and I think there was some hangover animosity toward that. There were he frequently made references about the election season and about kind of the political dynamic that's happening with the governor. That being said, it wasn't necessarily all malicious. I mean, he made a point of sometimes reaching out to the governor. I mean, he got the Amber Alert thing that the governor, you know, pushed for. He made that happen, despite someone in his own party saying, "What are we doing here?"
Interesting. Steve, good to see you again. You've covered a lot of these things. There's no question on that. Let's put something to bed right quick. Did we beat the deadline on that Saturday? Is everyone satisfied that we, in fact, did what we were supposed to do, or is there still some question about that?
That's a good question. I wasn't actually in the gallery watching at that point. I was over in the Senate watching the death throes of the gun control bill. Another one of our reporters, Robert Knott, was in there. He thinks it actually went over a little bit, and so did several other reporters sitting in the gallery there. And some of the progressive Democrats who oppose it say the same thing. It's probably a matter of seconds. Right. You know, officially, the session does end at the break of noon. That's the last ding-dong for the session there, but it may have gone over. I don't think anything will come of that,
right?
Except for grumbling, and there's certainly a lot of that.
Sure. We can't forget that there's new leadership on the other side of the Roundhouse as well. Ken Martinez ascended to the Speaker's chair again. What kind of impact, from your reporting, your observation, Matthew Reichbach, about Ken Martinez this first lap? What jumps out at you?
Well, I think that the last-minute thing that we were talking about before, that's what everybody's talking about. It's all anybody's talking about this session, is what happened at the very end. And, I mean, without Ken Martinez wanting to push that through, that doesn't happen. So his fingerprints are all over it, whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing. I know a lot of progressive Democrats were saying, what are we doing here? We didn't hear the FIR. We didn't see how much it's going to cost us. The FIR came out and ended up costing them money when they were promised it wouldn't, on the floor by Secretary Tom Clifford. So all of that right now, all that's being heaped on Martinez, and I think Sanchez he's kind of skated by, and Martinez skated by, and John Arthur Smith, who's the architect of the whole thing, his name's barely even on it. It's all on Martinez right now.
Is it a little bit of Mo Maestas as well to make this thing work?
A little bit of Mo Maestas. Okay. He had the Breaking Bad bill, but I think that he was just kind of the one degree of separation from Ken Martinez, because Ken Martinez obviously couldn't carry it since he's the speaker. But I think that Mo Maestas is playing the good soldier at that point, and it might not help him in the future if he looks for something else.
It's interesting. On that last-minute deal, James Monteleone, it was interesting to try to assess from a distance what was going on. From like down here in Albuquerque listening, I was like, what is going on up there? It was very hard to follow, including Twitter and other things. It was just very, very difficult. But I must ask, without that fiscal impact report that did not come in, that Matthew just mentioned, and other things that some folks had heartburn with on the House side, it just seems like now that we're getting issues about taxes potentially being raised for small communities out there, what's your sense of where we go forward from this bill? Is it going to be a bigger mess for Mo and some other people that we might think now, or is it going to be okay at the end of the day?
Well, you know, really there's two different pieces of that. I mean, we've got the short term and the long term. Short term speaking, I think that there's a lot of wait and see kind of attitude. You know, everyone's got, I mean, the financial numbers are theories, they feel like. So we're waiting to flesh them all out. Meanwhile, local communities are up in arms saying that some may have to raise taxes because they're going to lose this money from subsidies the state previously was paying to offset lost food taxes and medicine taxes.
Right.
And meanwhile, legislators are saying, just hold up a second, doesn't take effect for 2 years, let's just analyze how this all fits together. I think that's the short term, a lot of analysis trying to understand it. Long term, I don't think this has any real impact on any particular legislators that played a role in it because they can come back, they can change it. Part of what one component this did, changing the manufacturing tax credit, was that, I mean, that was a change from something that they missed last year.
That's right.
So that was
So
just
this is
a
not
1 year.
uncommon to come circle back and try to fix these things.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely, but Steve, I want to jump to another thing. We're going to come back to that in a quick second, but another thing I don't want to miss is the PRC and the reforms that did take hold. You wrote about this last week in a column. Talk about that in some very general terms. What do we a sense of this coming out? Could we expect a markedly different PRC at this point, at some point in the future, or was it?
Well, for one thing, they're not going to have the responsibilities of corporation registrations and insurance.
Right.
So that's less duties right there. And they're going to have some qualifications. I don't see I think in minimal qualifications, either college degrees or experience in various fields. And who knows, we may get a better quality of candidates coming out of that. You know, the whole PRC reform, I think New Mexico gets a lot of credit for it, but the real credit goes to Jerome Block Jr., who did everybody a favor by being charged with all these felony counts for all sorts of things. And that's like, what are we doing electing people like this to, you know?
Is the PRC, in your view, more or less politicized after this decision?
Oh, I don't think there'll be much difference. I don't think there'll be a dime's worth of difference in politicalization. You know, there's still politicians there, and still have to run for office to get there. So it's political. To me, it's not a dirty word anyway.
There you go, not bad.
But it's no less.
Andrew, Matthew, let's talk about Governor Susana Martinez and how she did. There was some compromise you mentioned about the film production tax credit, kind of rode in on a Trojan horse thing, and she had made mention that she wanted a comprehensive tax bill. That's why she kicked it back the first time. Was she smart to do it that way, and does she come out on the upside for having made that maneuver?
Well, obviously she's smart because I don't know if the tax bill would have passed otherwise if she didn't. Well, the Breaking Bad bill is a really small, and right now the Breaking Bad bill is such a small component of the rest of it that I don't know if we should call it the Breaking Bad bill anymore. It's the omnibus tax bill that has Breaking Bad tacked on.
There you go.
But Martinez, I think that she came out looking really well, and a lot of Democrats are saying, why is she coming out looking so well out of this when the Democrats are looking so bad on this tax package? She got basically everything she wanted in that tax package. She gave up combined reporting. She gave that to the Democrats, but it's so watered down, it's almost useless. And then the other parts that Democrats liked were fixing things that passed last year, like James mentioned. And of course, maybe in 2 or 3 years they'll be coming back and fixing this, but by that time she'll already have run for re-election, maybe been re-elected.
That's a good point.
Can I briefly chime in on
Absolutely.
that? And that is, I mean, I think that sometimes it's easy to say that the governor came out winning on that. But that was one instance that the governor actually showed legitimate compromise. And a perfect example of that is that the governor's been telling people, getting back to this food tax issue, the governor has been telling counties and cities for 2 years that she will veto this.
Right.
She will never support this. And here, when it comes time to get a few things that she wants and a few things that Democrats want, you know, the understanding coming from her office right now is that this is something that she supports and is going to move forward. So,
Rob Nicoleski, I have a question on that very point that James just made. It's interesting to me, she did not make an issue of what did not pass for her on social promotion issues and things like that. That sort of died quietly in committee about halfway through. But she didn't kick and scream about it, did she? She didn't really come out and say, since you all didn't do this, I can't do this.
Yeah,
you know?
well, that was kind of an equal opportunity thing, too, because Democrats who've taken quite a number of pot shots at her on the third grade social promotion bill, that sort of stuff, came up with their own suggestions. But those early reading initiatives didn't pass either. So, so neither side can really, you know, can claim great victory there.
Sure.
But I think that and I think I told Steve this right after the session ended, literally with about an hour and a half afterwards. She had a news conference up in the governor's lobby, and we were talking about, you know, who won in this, who won, who lost. Sure. And I said, I got a feeling the governor won on this one, but we'll find out when she walks through that door towards the cameras, and if she's got a big smile on her face, then that means she thinks she won. Right. And I think she thinks she won, and I think she probably did. I think if it had not been for that last-minute omnibus tax bill, I don't think there was a whole lot to talk about in this legislative session. Not a whole lot got done. Right. But, you know, at the end, that's like scoring a touchdown in the last 30 seconds of the game.
Right. It is like
everyone
NFL
forgets
football.
the first 59 and a half minutes.
That's right, exactly right. We're down tight on time, Steve, but again, your sense of things moving forward. Who's in a stronger position here? The governor, Democrats? Who's moving out of this in a better position?
Well, I agree with everybody else. I think the governor does come out looking good in this, and she got most of what she wanted, and just days before, it didn't look like she'd get anything she wanted. So she didn't get the education stuff. She didn't get the perennial issue of driver's licenses. I don't think she really, you know, there's a lot of kicking and screaming about it, but I think whoever said that she kind of didn't do too much kicking and screaming about it herself, I think is correct.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll see how that one plays out. I think Matthew's point earlier about we're getting pressed up to that time where it's almost going to be election time, so it's going to color everything. Now we're back in a moment with the session's sleeper issues.